We are here trying to create in your mind and in the mind of people you know the idea of local economy. Local economy is not just the local economy. It's not just business news. It's not just what you read about from Mike Perry and Dave Flessner in the Chattanooga Time Free Press. It is an idea and an ideal. And we're trying to have a better city by discussing the idea of the city, the idea of the rule of law, the ideal of liberty and prosperity, and the need, as we sometimes suggest, for an absence of anarchy in the state. The state today is the source of uncertainty, the source of anarchy. Anarchy is not a private thing. It really doesn't come from mobs of university students and the like. It really is in the state itself, where anarchy and uncertainty and arbitrary action, an arbitrary rule, is most readily found and most punitive to prosperity and the spirit of work, the desire for work. Now, just something I wanted to get to a moment ago, and I'll just mention it now, and that is the contrast to this economy that we want is really, in a way, what we have. What we have is, you might say, the Chamber of Commerce economy, where prosperity comes by bringing in outside money, and tourism and jobs is the mantra. Bringing in outside money and having people effectively work and export the profit into alien places, public shareholders or private owners elsewhere. That is the plantation economy that we have. And it's state supported. There's a lot of moral hazard in this economy where the risk is socialized and pushed down upon the taxpayer. Profit is privatized and goes to the top, you might say the top 5% of shareholders and activist investors. And there are many other things. There's the externalization of costs, where your staff is on welfare because you don't pay them enough. Again, that's, you might say, the socialization of your costs is pushed down into the economy, whereas you make the profits. So you have a lot of private profit, and you don't have a real community. You don't have a real city. There is an appearance of city, a kind of simulacrum of a city, but there is not a genuine humanity-filled community. Now, I'm not a communitarian. David Tulis here, I'm not one of those, but these people do say things that do have merit. In this plantation economy, we have these foreign overseers. We have, as I say, a lot of state interest, a lot of state programs. There's a lot of vertical social networks, whereas in a free market economy that we discuss and sort of yearn for, there is a web of horizontal networks. Again, horizontal versus vertical. And it is personal and social, not hierarchical. You see the difference? On the right-hand side, we've got the plantation economy. It's hierarchical, vertical, sort of power-driven, and business strip mines the people of their labor, of their wealth, and government as well. And in the other side, the free market economy that we want here for Chattanooga, it is personal, social, and value is not just in the dollar amounts that you reap every quarter. Dollars don't control in that vision. Well, in that contrast of those two views, we want to ask some questions now of John Schaerer. John Schaerer is a volunteer for the Chattanooga Regional Talent Dividend Initiative. It's a 501c3 organization, and is supported by some local groups that we'll hear about from him. John is 75 years old, spent his life in the teaching profession and administration. He's married, and he and his wife Barbara have two grown children. John, you are one who likes to talk about the marketplace and business. Give my listener a sense, in a nutshell, first of all, before we go into the details of your project. What is the real nature of local economy here vis-a-vis the national economy? What do you see as its strengths and its weaknesses?
Thanks, David, for this opportunity. The lifeblood of any economy amounts to the collective skills and talents of citizens, workers. And we are focusing on an untapped reservoir of talent. That is, people who have attempted to complete a college degree but never completed. They had the dream, but the dream fell apart. That dream is necessary in order to support a thriving, robust, dynamic economy. And to the extent that individuals can develop themselves on an ongoing basis in such a dynamic, changing economy and the way work is occurring, that we bring value-added benefit individually and collectively.
What then is the Talent Dividend Initiative?
Specifically, it's to recruit those who started to attempted a degree, that had a dream for completing a degree, back to college to complete it. That will enhance their status in terms of their career pursuits. It will help with the increasing their productivity and that of the company or business they're associated with. It will help to produce a more engaged society whereby individuals with higher education tend to be more engaged, and it promotes better health. Believe it or not, health is a primary factor, or education is a primary factor in good, solid health.
So advanced schooling, John Schaerer, is something that brings about for the individual, is a cause for the individual of greater prosperity. It's not just a coincidence. Then it's not. It sounds like what you're saying suggests that you don't believe my suggestion that it is a fallacy to say that college education brings greater wealth. I would say, if anything, it's coincidental with it. But you're saying no. There is a causal effect. If you have schooling and a diploma of some kind, you will be more prosperous.
If you have quality skills and competencies as a result of not only formal education, but informal education that you've learned on the job specifically.
So how does your program take into account the private gain of work experience?
Well, that's a good question. I appreciate it. There is a policy that is really in most higher ed institutions now called credit for prior learning. That is, they recognize the value-added benefit of an individual worker who has worked 10, 15, 20 years in various roles in business and industry, who desire to go back to fill their dream of completing their degree and upgrading their skills. As a result, become more productive and facilitate the productivity and competitiveness of the individual business that they're associated with.
Now, John, you've been most of your life in the public sector in education. What have you seen being an administrator earlier on in your career, a teacher? How do this background help you do what you're doing now? I guess what I'm really asking, John Schaerer, is tell my listener just a little bit about your background being in public schools. What have you done? Where have you come from to be where you are now?
Thank you. I am 75 years young. I just turned 3/4 of a century, July the 18th. So I do have some youth associated with that 75 years. My background has been in public education, K through 12, as a teacher, a principal, a founding superintendent of a school system, and in higher education as a dean of a college, a interim department chair in graduate studies, and I served 3 chancellors at the University of Tennessee, Bill Stacy, Roger Brown, and O'Bear. So that's my background. And then in connection with that, I moved into kind of an entrepreneurial role with technology transfer, became involved with the Enterprise Center that was established for tech transfer to facilitate intellectual property development from places like Y12 and Oak Ridge and Redstone Arsenal, to translate that into businesses. And we did have a successful transfer with what's called dry wipes. That a local,
which is called what now?
Dry wipes.
Dry wipes.
Yes.
Okay.
And they originally,
explain that.
Well, originally they were developed to clean beryllium in research labs, Sandia, Oak Ridge, and other national laboratories. And a gentleman in Chattanooga, Jay Doshi, who is the president, CEO of East Bend Technologies. I introduced this intellectual property to him. We went to Y12, and that culminated in a licensing purchase of the intellectual property, and East Bend Technologies is now producing those dry wipes to all of the federal laboratories for that purpose, and it has broader applications.
Well, Jay Doshi and East Bend has gotten a huge amount of media attention and traction, but that, so the listeners then thinks, well, there's really a lot going on there. But is that program really successful? I've not read much beyond that about this this transfer from government subsidized research with sort of quasi-military interest to the free market and the private sector.
Yeah, well, it is a viable product for East Bend Technologies, and there is a market that he's meeting. But I'm just citing this as part of my background. Another piece is the development of SimCenter Enterprises, which is a nonprofit, autonomous organization that's affiliated with the University of Tennessee system and of course, with the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Its purpose was to develop the intellectual property in a commercialization framework in order to bring that to fruition. I'll give you an example. The SimCenter in Chattanooga, that's the Computational Simulation Engineering Group, did the research on drag reduction on tractors and trailers. When you're driving down the interstate, you see these large tractor and trailers, and they have these side skirts. Those are called side fairings. They reduce the drag reduction by about 3.14%. And then you have the development at the rear of the tractor. That
you mean the back of the trailer?
The back of the trailer. I'm sorry.
Like a partial box on the back of the trailer.
That's right.
An open box.
Right. And they reduce drag. And so there's a situation where intellectual property was translated into a commercial product.
So again, the dynamic, though, John Schaerer, in this transfer story is that we have state investment, quote unquote. We have actually state taxpayer and borrowed money going into this sector, a state sector, and somehow these efforts are to try to have private people make a profit off of what is found in the research in the sector.
And I look on state support or federal support really as a external resource, in as much as it's there. It's the taxpayers' money to try to draw upon, capitalize for the benefit of the local economies.
Well, isn't state spending generally to be considered as consumption and not investment, and thereby these off-spinnings of technology that are used by capitalists and entrepreneurs for profit are really not very frequent and not very deep?
Well, I agree. It's probably a lot shallower than it should be, but that does not mean that the status quo should remain.
Well, what is your analysis, John Schaerer, of the status quo? Do we have state, effectively a corporate and state economy? We don't have a free market, and how is that? How in your analysis has that distorted what we could have in the Chattanooga area and in Tennessee? How could things be better?
The distortion is it creates pathways of dependency, which is a dead-end road. You've seen that in places like Detroit. And you take Chattanooga, we're all wrapped around the emotion of Volkswagen and suppliers connected with Volkswagen. But there is a risk of becoming so dependent on this one particular area of enterprise that we could end up like Detroit. Like Wolfburg, they could make a decision this morning to pull out of Chattanooga. There's no speculation that that's going to happen, but I mean, Wolfburg is a long way from Chattanooga, and they can make that decision very easily. So we've got over 170,000 individuals in the 16-county region that we're working with: North Alabama, North Georgia, and Southeast Tennessee. Over 1,700,000 individuals who have some college but never completed a degree. that's a loss of value.
And so the completion of a degree, you're thinking, is will create in that person a value that he doesn't have now, and will make him more marketable to companies and government that may want to hire him.
A value added benefit, yes. There's prosperity that lies within that for the individual and for the business that they're associated with.
But isn't the problem of degrees this, that when things are given away, their value falls in the public mind to zero? If Governor Haslam is giving away associate's degrees now at Chat State, we're hearing Chat State advertisements for come and get your free degree. Isn't that driving that subsidy driving down the value of a degree rather than driving it up, which means that people are going to look at it with skepticism and doubt?
Yeah, well, I understand the tendency for that to emerge, and it will be of interest to see really what the graduation rates are as a result of this particular so-called free. It really isn't free. It's our tax money that's being used supposedly as an investment, and if citizens take advantage of that investment, they can enhance their value, which can return to the local economies in terms of higher wages they earn, in terms of increased property taxes, revenue, increased sales and local taxes, and a decrease in public assistance.
Meaning welfare, family welfare.
That's right.
Well, I'm still trying to figure this out, John Schaerer, because if we have a sharing economy that has brought us, Uber, it has brought us Airbnb, it has brought us the whole internet economy that in many ways has replaced and taken market share from traditional media such as newspapers and television, even radio. There is a decentralization going into effect, and it seems like the governor is trying to shore up a centralized system of services, that being educational services. How is it that you can assume that an education for a year of schooling for a 14-year-old is really worth $10,000 when you have the internet, you have PDFs, you have YouTube, free classes by Stanford, Harvard, online, Princeton, that you have? Knowledge is not expensive. Knowledge is cheaper and cheaper. Why does the state system not recognize that?
Oh, yes. And look, I don't know what the governor's intentions are in terms of this and the spinoffs coming from his initiatives. I do know that what we're talking about in terms of talent development is that it is citizen-centric. It isn't government-centric. And it relies on the responsibility of the individual to take the initiative to promote and develop themselves on a continuous basis. You mentioned Uber. You know, that's the largest taxi service in the world. They don't own a single automobile. And you mentioned Airbnb. Here again, the largest hotel facility operation in the world, and they don't own a single property. So, and that comes from technology and software development, which continues to evolve. And in higher education, for example, in providing education, you mentioned this massive online, open online courses. They are commonly referred to as MOOCs. That really originated out in Stanford. This is inexpensive education that individuals should take advantage of and should incorporate what they learn there toward a degree that's in an established government institution, if they want to, either a government institution or a private institution. We work with private and public higher education institutions in the region.
We're talking with John Schaerer. This is David Tulis. Thank you for joining us here on YouTube at Hot News Talk Radio, and also on Facebook at Nooga Radio. We're asking a very interesting question of John Schaerer, who is a volunteer at a Chattanooga Regional Talent Dividend Initiative. He's also connected with Sim Center Enterprises. John Schaerer has a doctorate in education, long career in public school teaching and administration at the university level, as well. The thing you're pointing to, John, and we have some very important messages we want the listener to consider in just a minute, but you're suggesting that the individual there should be a way for individuals to be certified for what they've done privately in the way of studying listening to lectures, opening themselves to coursework, as it were, privately. In other words, the shift in certification seems to be in the marketplace shifting away from institutions and toward individuals. And this is David Tulis. We're talking with John Schaerer, and we'll have more questions for him about his efforts to get more people in the Chattanooga area and in the 16th county area, this worthwhile group called Thrive 2055, to have them get more classwork in and training. The idea being that they will be worth more in local economy here in the Chattanooga area. David Tulis will be right back. Got some important messages. Our argument: love your neighbor and buy local. David Tulis.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.